Liberation Army. Like most of the Army's top brass, the general's based on the Thai side of the frontier, but he keeps in regular contact with his troops, with visits like this one to the training camp of the Army's 7th Brigade. A short pep talk boosts morale, but words are no substitute for weapons, and that's what the Karens are short of at the moment. Many of their arms are old, and new ones are both scarce and expensive. The general's personal weapon, though, has a touch of luxury, a silver colt strung from his shoulder. These are raw recruits, but the Karen armies had plenty of opportunity to gain experience. It's been fighting this war since 1948, when Burma gained independence from Britain. At that time, they were promised their own state within a Burmese federation, with the right to secede completely after 10 years if they wanted to. But independence was followed by civil war, the promises never materialized, and since 1962, the Karens, along with the other separatists, have been fighting the increasingly authoritarian rule of General Ne Win. It's been a long, hard struggle for the Karens, and it's not getting any easier. New recruits are now picked up as soon as they're big enough to hold a rifle. These youngsters are among a group of about 100 boy soldiers currently undergoing training at a camp further into the heart of Karen country. Judging from appearances, they're still of school age, but they'll all be on active service in a few weeks' time. The man in charge of training is the Karen's intelligence chief, Colonel Marvel. We asked him just how old the boys were.
He's 15 years and above.
Yes. How long do they sign up for?
Since from last year.
And how long will they stay in the army?
Not less than 7 years in future.
What sort of reasons are these young boys joining for?
They are fighting for their Karen national freedom.
Although there's plenty of snap in the training, most recruits go on active service without ever having fired a shot, because the army can't afford the ammunition.
We don't need so much training, and we don't use so much bullets for training. They are what I could say is they are gifted.
What is the casualty ratio? Do you have a lot of casualties?
No, very few.
How many in, say, the last month?
Not exceeding up to 30. So there's a lot of engagement with the enemies. So more than 20 engagement.
How many soldiers are there in the Karen army at this time?
Well, I cannot say exactly, but not less than 10,000 armed personnel right now.
More recruits for the 7th Brigade, but no schoolboys here. There are 50 girls in the 7th Brigade alone. Although they're all armed, they're not used in combat, at least not yet. They perform traditional feminine duties such as nursing and teaching, but they also provide the village security force or home guard, thus releasing more men for the front. For the past year, the Karen's main headquarters has been here, in an area guarded by 2 mountain passes. Although the army's 10,000 strong, there's rarely more than a few dozen training here at any one time. For security reasons, all the rest are kept well spread out in the surrounding jungle. The name of this place means Fields of Victory, and the Karens have abundant faith that that's just what they will be. But until now, there's been little chance of any of the minorities succeeding on their own, and the differences between them have prevented them joining together. Last year, though, the Karens joined with 4 other ethnic groups in a bid to topple President Ne Win and create a federation. The Common Front has done something to improve communications between the groups, but it's got little else to its credit as yet. And the latest news is that the Shan Army, a powerful force, has now joined with the Burmese Communist Party. The Victory Fields HQ contains a military hospital, very small, very primitive, but it had coped, somehow, with this leg amputation. Apart from this man, a soldier, the hospital contained only 2 other patients when we were there, a farmer and his young nephew. Both had been injured when Burmese troops attacked their village. The boy, 11-year-old Saw Da, lost his brother in the attack and was himself left for dead after being badly injured in the leg. The unlikely echoes of Lily Mar Lane surface in a Karen hymn tune, a relic no doubt of the British period. This is morning prayers at Victory Fields School.
With a big bang, Big bang,
Roughly 40% of the Karens are Christians, the rest are Buddhists. But they share the same dedication to their nation's cause and the same stern morality. Life is Spartan, and boys and girls kept well apart. Sex outside marriage is strictly forbidden. The school has over 130 pupils, some of them farmers' children, but mostly the sons and daughters of army officers. There's no secondary education available, and since they are not allowed passports, few Karens can hope to study abroad. But the education they get here has a very British slant at times.
Now, let us see the story. Turn to the story of the merchant of Venice. Why did he want to borrow such a large sum of money? Can anyone tell me? To go and borrow some of money from Shylock. When he wanted to borrow money from Shylock, Shylock wanted to give him without asking for any interest. Isn't that so? He didn't want to ask for any interest. But for a joke, he said he wanted just a pound of flesh.
Keeping the schools supplied with qualified teachers isn't easy. In fact, it's sometimes so difficult the Karens have had to resort to kidnapping. Tera Su-ya was seized by the Karen army in his home village and brought here to teach chemistry. That was 9 months ago, and although he's been allowed to write to his parents, he's no idea when he'll be allowed back. In the meantime, he simply keeps on teaching and hoping that Victory Fields is as secure as the Karens say it is. Over 5 fragile bridges which link Burma with Thailand at this point cross several secret jungle trails which are vital to the operations of the Karen army. There's constant traffic here across the border to and from the busy frontier town of Kamura Gate. The Karen-held town's a bustling trading point where black market goods are bought, sold and exchanged, many of them eventually finding their way to Rangoon. Kamura Gate's also the centre for a thriving business in smuggling, and it's through this illicit traffic that the Karens make the money they need to wage their war. It all goes to make Kamura one prize that the Burma army would dearly love to take from the Karens. Though outwardly there's little sign of it, Kamura Gate's one of the Karens' most heavily guarded strongholds. And while we weren't allowed to film them, we were shown minefields around the town and a Karen barracks for 400 troops just across the border on the Thai side. It's the Karens' involvement in smuggling which makes Kamura so important. Many of the makeshift stalls contain fortunes in precious gems which have been gathered from the surrounding countryside. Lumps of uncut jade, worth thousands of pounds once they reach the shops of Hong Kong and Taipei. Karen officers keep a close watch on the town's Chinese traders and levy a tax on all the contraband which passes through their hands. The army collects 4% on rubies, sapphires, jade and jewellery, perhaps $3,000 a month. And with M16 rifles costing $300 each, that doesn't go very far. In addition to the smuggling tax, the Karens themselves trade timber, cattle, tin, antimony and wolfram, all to finance their struggle. This Karen patrol was on its way to Mi Po village, where refugees from a Burmese army attack had been given shelter. Though the Karen troops were watchful for enemy activity, they knew this part of the border to be comparatively safe. The refugees were some of about 2,000 who are known to have lost their homes, though Karen figures are much higher. They claim up to 40,000 have been displaced. Whatever the true number, looking after them poses a problem, for they're widely spread out along most of the band of country which the Karens occupy on the eastern border.
บ้านประเดี๋ยวนี้มันจะมาห้องบ้านผมมันเลยก็ไม่ใช่มันห้องทางใต้บ้านผมเพราะว่าได้ขัวมันก็ได้ป้ายกันนี่ใช่ไหมที่มันห้องกันก็ห้องหลายที่ละยังคนตายป่ะคนตายกะ
She said the Burmese are fighting with the Karen and there's some people dead in the fighting there.
In his village?
In his village, yes.
ประตายก็เป็นนี่ละประเป็นก็ตายละมันยังเขายังบาดยุทธประเด็นยังขึ้นมาแอนตี้ที่อยู่อีกบันนี้ก็มันจะเป็นยังไงล่ะมันก็จำเป็นแน่นี่ละ
They come in and then they take the rice and take
The Burmese soldiers.
the Burmese soldier take the rice and burning some of the village. So they are afraid they have nothing to fight. So when they're coming, they just have to abandon the village.
Was anybody killed in his village?
หลายๆคนนั้นนอกประเภทประชาชนหันได้ขายเดี๋ยวมันตายในป่าในเมียงก็เนี่ย
He said when there is fighting, there is the people who kill there, but he don't know how many, and even the people in the village still fighting. They still have some killing, but they haven't seen himself.
Man Barzan, the president of the Karen's political wing, the National Union, is the man leading the campaign for autonomy. He's a realist, prepared to bury his differences and join forces with the other separatist movements if that's the only way to achieve his aim. He sees big changes ahead.
At present, there's a revolution in Burma. That makes Burma change into the new social system. What I see is because the peoples are fighting against the government because they didn't like the social system adopted by the government.
What sort of arrangement can you see to replace the present government in Burma?
There will be national democratic government in future.
Which means, what does national democratic mean?
That means that government will be represented by the four classes of people.
Which are?
Workers, peasants, traders, businessmen, and then the capitalists, So.
And how would you solve the relations between the various minority peoples and the Burmese?
The thing is that there's only one thing to be solved. That means to grant the ethnic groups their right of self-determination. That means to give them full autonomous states and then form them into a federal union.
The Federal Union of Autonomous States?
Autonomous states, yes.
And that would also include the Burmese?
Burmese too.
It's been a problem all along that you have gone together, all these groups have come together, the Shan, the Karen and so forth, and then the groups there have been splinter groups,
yes.
And this happened only a couple of months ago. The majority of the Shan army went over to the Burmese Communist Party.
One thing is that those Shans that joined together with the Communist Party are not on ideological basis. They want arms. They want to attack New Win for their national independence. So, to get the arms, they join with the CBB. So, to get arms from the Chinese Communist Party, they must join with the CBB first. And only after that, the Chinese accept them.
Is there any circumstances under which you would join the communists?
Before you mean?
Now?
No.
Would you consider working together with the Communist Party of Burma against New Win?
So if the situation is like the Second World War, for example, when the American, Britain, France and Soviet Union joined together and fight against the fascists. So if the situation is like this, we must join with the Communist Party too.
But just against New Win, you would not do it?
No.
Mr. President, let me ask you, do you think that the Karen can win?
Yes, sure, definitely.
Alone?
No, that's a bit difficult. By joining with other forces too.
And
the revolution is not like those in the 17th or 18th century's revolutions. But there are so many ideological differences among us. So thus we have to negotiate or make it to some extent to get equal terms. So we have to wait for it and then. And besides that, the time is changing too. So circumstances will force us to be united. And this will not be long, I think. Because we got understanding among each others. No?
But you just can't work together?
No, we can work together. So I think by next year or another 2 years, then you will see that united front and progressed. We have already formed it. So we have to make it more developed in future too.
A difficult period in the Karen's already lengthy battle for this beautiful frontier land. Certainly it's an area worth fighting for, but the strain's increasing all the time. In future, the Thai government may not be so willing to allow the Karens their sanctuaries across the border, for Thailand's anxious to secure good relations with Ne Win. At the same time, the Burmese military campaign's being stepped up. There are rumours of an order from Ne Win to shoot on sight anyone found in the hills. It's part of a programme the government calls Victory and Rule, and it could whittle away support for the Karen rebel army among the ordinary villagers of the region. Faced with this increasing pressure, the Karens are even more determined to dig in and defend loyal villages against Burmese attack. Depending on how much faith they have in the KNLA's fighting ability, it's either reassuring or worrying for the local folk. So far, it's estimated that some 40,000 people, soldiers and civilians, have died in the Karen conflict. No political solution to the problem's been sought, apart from a series of amnesties offered by Ne Win and ignored by the rebel leaders, who'll settle for nothing less than autonomy for their separate peoples. Despite the length of their campaign, their lack of progress, the fact that they've actually been driven back to the border, the Karens doggedly stick to their ideals, diligently patrolling their shrinking homeland, even fasting once a week for the sake of their cause. But there's no more evidence today that they're any nearer realizing their dream of a free Karen state than they were in 1948. Clearly, they are pinning their hopes on presenting a united front to the Ne Win government and his forces. In this, the Karen National Union have been the driving force. But the diverse ideologies of the various groups give little promise that the plan will succeed. A political settlement with Rangoon now seems further away than ever before. But that doesn't appear to worry the Karens. Having fought for so long, they're in no mood to give up now. They are just as prepared as the government to fight on to a military solution.